God afton och varmt välkomna till kvällens program Mitt Jönköping med mig Henric Grännö. Ja, vi har haft några härliga dagar i Vätterbygden. Solen har skinit och värmt upp marken. Vi har fått säkra vårtecken. Vitsipporna har kommit i våra backar. Och jag känner i benen att våren är här. För att jag klättrade i våra äppelträd igår där hemma på Torpa. Och naturligtvis känns det i benen på en gammal man dagen efter. Men det är en härlig känsla. Vi ska börja programmet i Sofiakyrkan. Vi gästade högmässan i söndags. Och där var en engelsk kör som tillsammans med våra egna kyrkosångare sjöng tillsammans så härligt. Och det var en glädje och stämning i kyrkan utöver det vanliga, tycker jag. Vi ska börja med att lyssna till en sång som de sjöng tillsammans. Och det är nog på texten: Detta är dagen den Herren gjort, låt oss på den fröjdas och vara glada. Det är en sång ur Psaltaren, tror jag. Men här sjöng de engelska gästerna, de är blåklädda och våra svenska sångare är rödklädda. Och de sjöng så glatt tillsammans. Och det var en riktigt trallvänlig kör också. Inte svår att sjunga med i. Så här lät det. Och efter högmässan så hade vår präst Danfors, tog han fram en gryta fram i kyrkan och avtackade en husmor som hade varit verksam i 20 år. Och han tog på sig en kockmössa och ett förkläde över prästskruden och höll ett väldigt trevligt tal till den avgående husmor. Men vi ska avsluta inslaget i Sofiakyrkan med att återvända i slutet av mässan då vi sjöng på latin. Och det var en fin text och jag ska be att få läsa den. Laudate omnes gentes, laudate dominum. Laudate omnes gentes, laudate dominum. Och det betyder på svenska: sjung lovsång alla länder och prisa Herrens namn. Sjung lovsång alla länder och prisa Herrens namn. En härlig sång vi avslutade med. Nu ska vi förflytta oss till London och vi ska sända reportaget som handlar om Frälsningsarméns ledning i världen. Det leds ju av en general och vi har haft ett 20-tal generaler, drygt det kanske, under alla år efter det att William Booth startade Frälsningsarméns verksamhet i östra London. William Booth och hans tanke var ju att varje general skulle utse sin efterträdare. Men 1904 så skapades Höga rådet då William Booth insåg att det kunde hända att någon general inte klarade av att utse sin efterträdare. Sonen Branwell Booth var tillsammans med William Booth ett fantastiskt ledarteam. Och när William Booth dog så var det självklart att sonen Branwell skulle bli general. Men 1928 blev Branwell Booth sjuk. Och då var det bra att ha det Höga rådet som William Booth 1904 hade tillsatt. Det ska denna film visa. Under sammanträdet som varade i flera veckor var det stor dramatik. Någon kommendör kollapsade och fick bäras ut och en annan avled och fick slaganfall och Frälsningsarmén var skakad. Det här reportaget startar vi nu, varsågoda.
On the morning of January the 11th, 1929, 2 cars carrying 7 senior Salvation Army officers were heading towards the seaside resort of Southwold in Suffolk. In pursuit, 14 cars full of press and photographers. This was a big story. The officers were delivering a letter. It had been signed by them and the 49 other members of the Salvation Army's first ever High Council, and it called on General Bramwell Booth to retire. What it didn't say, though everyone knew it, was that if he refused, a vote would be taken to try and force him from office. Bramwell and Florence Booth came to Southwold and to this house whenever they needed to get away. General Bramwell Booth was a national celebrity, but here they lived under the names of Captain and Mrs. Bernard, and no one disturbed them. Until now. Bramwell Booth hadn't been seen in public since May of the previous year, when he made a huge effort to attend the stone-laying ceremony for the new training college at Denmark Hill. That was 8 months ago. It was obvious then that he was far from well, and since November his condition had worsened and he was now seriously ill. The delegation from the High Council arrived in Southwold shortly after 10, to an understandably frosty reception from the family. They were finally allowed to see him after lunch and were shocked to see just how frail he looked and how much older he seemed than his 72 years. But falteringly, he spoke to them. The delegation left with an agreement that they'd have a response to their letter in 3 days' time. But how had it come to this? What had gone wrong? It was less than 3 years since Bramwell Booth had celebrated his 70th birthday here at the Royal Albert Hall. The King had sent his congratulations. The former Prime Minister Lloyd George had hosted a lunch in his honour. The army was growing all over the world, and people loved their general. But behind the scenes, those who worked with Bramwell Booth most closely were worried. They could see that the years were beginning to take their toll. He'd always been prone to stress, but now it was noticeably getting worse. What's more, rumbles of discontent were beginning to be heard, not least in America, where Bramwell's sister Evangeline Booth was the army's passionate and charismatic commander. When her brother toured America a month after his birthday, Evangeline warned him not to try to ignore those calling for reform. Changes needed to be made. Big changes.
The changes that the reformers were calling for had to do with the power and authority vested in the office of the general. You see, William Booth ruled like an autocrat. And when Bramwell Booth succeeded him, he continued in that same style. But by the 1920s, there were many who questioned whether that was really still appropriate. The Salvation Army had grown into a vast international organization, fighting on 1,000 different fronts. Commander Evangeline Booth and the reformers were calling for 3 specific changes to the Constitution. Firstly, that the general should no longer have the right to appoint his successor by means of placing the name of the person he had chosen in a sealed envelope to be opened at his death. And secondly, that the generalship should no longer be for life. And thirdly, that the general should no longer be the sole trustee of the Salvation Army's assets, but that there should be a group of trustees controlling the Army's finance and property.
But Bramwell Booth was unwilling to change the way the army was run. And more to the point, he didn't think that change was legally possible. The thing was that in 1878, the same year that the Christian Mission had changed its name to the Salvation Army, William Booth, Bramwell's father, had also decided to change the Constitution. Normally, with such a legal document, you would put in a clause allowing the Constitution to be amended to fit changing circumstances. But William Booth refused to have any such clause. It meant he was setting the Constitution in stone, unless he was prepared to go to Parliament and allow them to alter it, and that seemed unthinkable. A secular institution making decisions about the Salvation Army, no thank you. But by the end of the century, William Booth was beginning to think perhaps he'd made a mistake and was imagining situations where it could all go horribly wrong. One scenario nearly became reality in 1897. William and Bramwell were driving up here, Farringdon Road in London, on their way to King's Cross Station, when suddenly, bang! An anarchist bomb went off just over there, far too close for comfort. The thing was, the Constitution stated that generals could only be appointed by their predecessors, and Bramwell, although he didn't know it, was his father's appointee. If they'd both been killed, not only would the Salvation Army have lost its general, it would also have lost his nominated successor, and there would have been no legal process in place for appointing anyone else. William told Bramwell, as Chief of Staff, to consult the lawyers, to try to find a way to change the unchangeable and amend the Constitution without the need to go to Parliament.
The three top constitutional lawyers in Britain advised that the Constitution could not be changed, but it could be supplemented without reference to Parliament. And so in 1904, William Booth introduced a supplementary constitution. By this supplementary constitution, the general was required to have more than one sealed envelope. Upon his death, the first sealed envelope would be opened, and if the person named was no longer alive or did not wish to serve as general, then the second envelope had to be opened, and so on until finally the Salvation Army had a new general. The other change was the possibility of calling a high council to judge whether a general had become unfit for office for moral or physical or mental reasons, and if so, to elect a successor.
Both William and Bramwell Booth believed the clauses about removing generals from office were just an insurance policy to cover a situation that almost certainly would never occur. But they did open the door just a chink to the possibility of removing a general from office. And by the start of 1928, more and more Salvation Army leaders were beginning to believe that such a possibility might have to become a reality, and sooner rather than later.
With advancing years, Bramwell Booth's leadership style, instead of mellowing, became more and more autocratic. And this gave added impetus to Evangeline Booth and the other reformers who were seeking to change the style in which the army was being led. But Bramwell Booth felt that it was his duty, his God-given duty, to preserve the trust that his father had given to him. But then something totally unexpected happened. In May 1928, Bramwell Booth had a health breakdown. At first, people thought, well, he'll be away for a few weeks, and then we'll be able to keep up the pressure for reform. But the weeks turned into months, and his very absence from the helm for so long became an issue in the whole 1929 crisis.
Things came to a head on November the 13th, 1928, when Commissioner Edward Higgins, the Chief of the Staff, visited the General in Southwold and found him seemingly close to death. In great distress, he returned to London and spoke to the British Commissioner Samuel Hurren. Hurren knew he had to act fast and started to make some urgent phone calls. At 9 o'clock the following morning, Commissioner Hurren and 6 other commissioners met at the office of Solicitor Mr. Percival Wright at 19 Godliman Street, just over the road from Army Headquarters. They quickly signed the required letter, calling on the Chief of the Staff to summon the High Council for the purpose of adjudicating whether the General is unfit for office. Within minutes, it was delivered to the Chief, and he immediately ordered cables to be sent to council members all around the world, telling them to drop everything and to be at Sunbury Court on January the 8th.
The reason the commissioners acted with such speed on that November morning is that the moment Bramwell Booth died, the sealed envelope would become active, and the named person in the envelope would instantly become the next general. They feared that if that were to happen, it could put back the course of reform for a whole generation. However, if the High Council was called before he died, while he was still alive, then the sealed envelope would be suspended, the High Council would meet, and if the general was declared unfit, then the sealed envelope would be destroyed and the new general elected. But Bramwell Booth did not die in November. In fact, he got better, comparatively so, because it wasn't until 7 days before the High Council, on the 1st of January 1929, that the doctors declared that he was well enough to be told that the High Council had been called.
On January the 8th, 1929, 63 council members, 2 recorders and a legal advisor were squeezed into the house at Sunbury Court. Outside in the bitter cold, Salvation Army officers and the police were guarding all the entrance, keeping out the press, who in huge numbers were noting down all the comings and goings and speculating about what it all meant. At 10:30 in this room, the first ever High Council was called to order. Now, how they were able to cram in all the tables and chairs is something of a mystery. But somehow they managed it. Commissioner Edward Higgins opened proceedings with prayer. He sent a message of love and sympathy to the General, and then they worked their way through various procedural items. So it wasn't until the following morning that Commissioner Henry Mapp could suggest sending the delegation to Southwold with that letter urging Bramwell Booth to retire. In the event, it was nearly a week before they got their reply. It was an unequivocal no. In all conscience, the General couldn't and wouldn't stand down. At last, on Wednesday the 16th of January, the motion to declare Bramwell Booth unfit for office was moved. They debated it for 12 hours.
Catherine Booth spoke for 90 minutes in defence of her father. She very pointedly questioned the real motivation for calling the High Council. It wasn't, she argued, for the officially stated reason to judge whether the General was unfit for office or not. No, it was to stop the sealed envelope naming his successor ever coming into play. She ended with a stirring cry, "I appeal to you in the name of God to declare Bramwell Booth fit to continue General of the Salvation Army."
It was powerful and moving, but it wasn't enough. Just after 11 p.m, the council voted. An hour later, the result was announced. 55 had voted that General William Bramwell Booth be removed from office. Just 8 voted for him to stay on. The following day was a rest day. They all needed it. They were physically and emotionally exhausted. Next day, Friday, 5 people were nominated to be the new General, but only 2 accepted, Evangeline Booth and the Chief of the Staff, Edward Higgins. But they didn't move to a vote straight away. Instead, they discussed reform. Lieutenant Commissioner William Haynes was particularly passionate. He called for an end to what he saw as the era of forbidden speech, forbidden thought, forbidden conscience, and forbidden action. It took so much out of him, though, that to everyone's alarm, he collapsed. The famed army cup of tea, though, seemed to do the trick, and before long he was sitting up on a sofa outside the council chamber. Then, more drama. The council's legal advisor announced he'd just received a phone call. Bramwell Booth had appealed to the High Court, and he'd been granted an injunction preventing the election of a new general going ahead. The council members couldn't believe it. They were devastated. And then dismay turned to tragedy. On hearing of the injunction, William Haynes had a heart attack and died.
There was a deep feeling, you see, that taking the army to court over an issue like this ran counter to the Salvation Army's own regulations based on Scripture. And Bramwell Booth lost a great deal of support. In fact, telegrams and letters poured in from all over the world. And within the High Council itself, the only support that remained was from his own immediate family. It was even the final straw for his trusted right-hand man, Commissioner Edward Higgins, the Chief of the Staff.
The case to make the injunction permanent came to court 11 days later. At the start of the High Council, members ruled that the General couldn't be represented by his barrister. It wasn't as if he was on trial, they said. But Bramwell's lawyers argued that this was against natural justice. He was being prevented from putting his case properly. The judge agreed. The High Council would have to do it all again, this time with lawyers present. The council reconvened at Sunbury Court on February the 13th, with barristers and medical experts now allowed to speak. But it made no difference to the outcome. 52 voted for the motion that Bramwell Booth was unfit for office. 5 voted against, 4 abstained. This time, the council moved quickly to the election of a new general. Again, only Edward Higgins and Evangeline Booth agreed to stand. Just before midnight, they started to vote, and in the early hours of Valentine's Day 1929, the result was announced. Commissioner Edward Higgins was duly elected on the first ballot. The Salvation Army had a new general, and he wasn't a Booth.
On the 16th of June, just 4 months after the end of the High Council, Bramwell Booth died. At his funeral, 3,500 Salvationists marched in procession, and thousands of ordinary Londoners lined the streets to show their respect for a much-loved man.
Next to William Booth, Bramwell Booth is the greatest general the Salvation Army has ever had, and whose equal we're unlikely to see again. William Booth was the visionary, but Bramwell Booth was the mastermind who brought it all together. In those 16 years of his generalship, the number of officers in the world almost doubled. The Army's work extended to 25 further countries, and its influence and impact grew worldwide. His legacy is absolutely secure. It could have been even greater if he had instituted reform. Reform had to come. The circumstances had changed. And if Bramwell Booth had brought about reform, it would have been the crowning jewel in a life of achievement for the Lord and the Army. But it was not to be. Reform therefore came to the Army in a painful way. But what shook the Army also shaped its future. And through the events of 1929, the Salvation Army came of age, and the Army was set on a path of reform that continues to this day. Therefore, 1929 is part of the heritage of every Salvationist.
There's little doubt that the name that Bramwell Booth put into the sealed envelope as his successor was that of his daughter Catherine. She was fiercely loyal to him and to his memory, so much so that on his death she changed her surname from Booth to Bramwell Booth. And it was as Catherine Bramwell Booth in her 90s that she won the hearts of millions through her TV appearances on programmes like Parkinson.
How are you?
Oh, I think I'm as well as can be expected.
You're nearer that century, aren't you?
Yes, I am than when I saw you last.
That's right.
Bramwell Booth believed generals should be generals for life. It's an intriguing thought that if his daughter Catherine had succeeded him on that basis, She would have been General of the Salvation Army for 58 years until her death in 1987 at the age of 104.
Ja, ifrån de dramatiska dagarna 1929 så har vi haft kanske drygt 20-talet generaler för Frälsningsarmén i världen. Här i Jönköping är det inte så många som har besökt oss. Ett par kvinnliga vet jag vi har haft, Eva Burrows och senast nu Linda Bond, den kanadensiska generalen som inte var så många år faktiskt. Det var bara drygt 2 år som hon ville vara general för Frälsningsarmén. Ofta var de väl i hög ålder när de tillsattes och det betydde att de kunde pensionera sig själva när de tyckte det var lämpligt. Kanske inte Linda Bond trivdes så bra på högkvarteret i London, vad vet jag. Men här är ett inslag när hon besökte kåren i Jönköping Huskvarna. Här kommer det inslaget, varsågoda. Med från Kungsporten och vi ser mycket frälsningssoldater och andra som har samlats där. Och musikkåren, en stor musikkår spelar, Jönköpings kårs musikkår. Här kommer generalen och marscherar in, högtidligt och fint. Och så har vi Frälsningsarméns chef i Sverige också, Marie Willemark, som går i blondinen där till vänster. Och general, hon kommer ifrån Kanada, berättar hon. Jag sa det förra gången också. Hon älskade ABBA. Så älskar hon IKEA bland annat. Och det kommer hon att säga här i det här lilla inslaget som vi har här alldeles strax här. Och vår Marie Willemark överlämnar också en present till henne. Det får vi höra strax här när musikkåren har spelat färdigt. En litet smycke överlämnar hon till Frälsningsarméns världschef. Ni förstår att det var en högtidsstund för oss.
Det är ett litet smycke som kan bäras när generalen inte har uniform. Jag menar, de få tillfällena måste man göra något speciellt av. Och ett hantverk från Jönköpingstrakten är väl lämpligt. Ja. You want to hear about these things I love about Sweden? Vill ni höra de sakerna som jag tycker om Sverige? I love IKEA! Jag älskar IKEA!
I told them today when I first moved to London, 1995, I could not afford anything in England.
Och jag berättade förut idag att när jag kom till England 95
And I could afford £1.
och det hade jag råd med.
I bought things I didn't even need.
Så jag köpte saker jag inte ens behövde.
I loved it.
Älskar det.
But I have heard and I know that the Salvation Army has been a wonderful army in Sweden.
Men jag har hört och jag vet att Frälsningsarmén har varit en underbar frälsningsarmé i Sverige.
And I've met officers, salvationists from here, and I know the fire burns brightly for the Lord Jesus Christ.
Och jag har mött officerare och soldater härifrån och jag vet att elden brinner starkt för Jesus Kristus.
And the Lord is here tonight.
Herren är här ikväll.
This is not just about an army meeting or a church meeting. We're in the presence of the Lord.
Det här är inte bara ett armémöte eller en gudstjänst. Vi är i Guds närhet.
And whether we speak English or Swedish, God is going to speak to us in a language we all understand.
Om vi talar engelska eller svenska spelar det ingen roll, för Gud kommer att tala till oss var och en på ett språk som vi förstår.
And all he's going to want to know from us is for us to say in whatever language, yes.
Och allt han vill av oss är att vi säger på vilket språk som helst, ja.
He's here.
Han är här.
And I believe he can transform our lives even this night.
Och jag tror att han kan förvandla våra liv till och med den här kvällen.
And I have come believing that with all my heart.
Och jag har kommit hit och jag tror det av hela mitt hjärta.
It is good to be here.
Det är gott att vara här.
God bless you.
Gud välsigne.
Från generaler till vanliga svenskar i detta ekumeniska program. För några år sedan så hade jag LP-bröder i studion. LP-bröder, vad är det? Ja, det är människor som har upplevt en förvandling genom kristen tro ifrån drogmissbruk och spritbegär till ett kristet liv. I studion hade jag Ulf Rånge, Tony Johansson, Kent Karlqvist och Simron Schenberg, välkända Jönköpingsbor, som sjöng sången Halleluja, vilken Gud vi har. Och Jesus sjöng med i studion. Det var Jon Heipalo som skulle spela Jesus på teatern. Han sitter i studion tillsammans med dramaturgen Eva Edevik och de sjunger med i denna härliga sång. Sedan ska jag säga ett par ord om till minne utav en förlust vi har gjort, Olle Widerstrand här i Jönköping som har fått hembud.
Halleluja, vilken Gud vi har som
Underbart.
allt förmår.
Ja, vad fint.
Halleluja, vilken Gud vi har som allt förmår. Han vill göra ännu mer idag än han gjorde igår. Vänta nu idag på bönesvar. Kan du börja tacka Gud? Han som mötte bedja, han vill göra mera. Höj ditt hjärtas ord som Gud. Ofta skiner solen klar, inga molnen skymmer. All den lycka då jag har, som världen rymmer. Men som plötsligt mörknar ut, ormmånen hopar sig. Då jag minns hans löfte, helt han blir med köpte. Han har lovat hjälpa mig. Halleluja, vilken Gud vi har som allt förmår. Han vill göra ännu mer idag än han gjorde igår. Vänta nu idag på bönesvar. Kan du börja tacka Gud? Han som mötte bedja, han vill göra mera. Höj ditt hjärta så som Gud. Om du alltid hopplös det inte känns din dag. Morgondagen mörk sig ner, du är trött och svag. Den som plötsligt rusar ut, du blir påmind om Guds makt. För att klara över, ge vad du behöver. Snart är allt till rätta. Kom igen då! Halleluja, vilken Gud vi har som allt förmår. Han vill göra ännu mer idag än han gjorde igår. Väntar du idag på bönesvar? Kan du börja tacka Gud? Han som mötte bedja, han vill göra mera. Höj ditt hjärtas lov som Gud.
Ja, först ska jag meddela en liten nyhet och det är att Kristina Jeppsson, hon som var kårledare här på kåren i Jönköping för några år sedan, har utnämnts till ledare för Frälsningsarmén i Danmark. Det ska vi återkomma till. Men nu vill jag säga några ord till minne av min gode vän Olle Widerstrand. Församlingsmusiker i Månelkyrkan, det var väl där jag lärde känna honom mest. Men han var också en stor musiker och sångpedagog. Han var vid högskolan i Jönköping. Han var tonsättare och skrev musik till ett par psalmer som vi känner igen. Psalm 90 och 61 i Svenska psalmboken. Blott i det öppna med text av Britt G. Hallqvist och Lågorna är många med Anders Forstensson som författare. Men han har också gjort musik till många andra sånger i sångböcker som vi känner till. Och barnvis, och han var ju en stor pedagog och undervisade i barnsånger bland annat. En alltid glad vän Olle, och vi hade en del gemensamt. Jag spelade in många av hans musikaler och han kom alltid och ville ha min hjälp. Och Jönköpings-Postens kultursida på 70-talet, där hade vi en spalt tillsammans som hette Andlig spis, där vi recenserade varannan gång, Olle och jag, nya skivor som kom ut på de olika förlagen. Jag har tittat i Jönköpings-Postens kultursidor de senaste dagarna och jag har inte sett någonting än till minne av vår store pedagog inom musik och sång, Olle Widerstrand, men det kanske kommer. Då vill jag alltså till nästa program spela upp en musikal, och det är en kombination av olika musikaler som Olle har gjort tillsammans med prästen Per-Arne Waldenvik. Den heter Det finns broar ingen ser och den spelades in och framfördes i Kristine kyrka för några år sedan. En fantastisk upplevelse tyckte jag, och där har vi den enormt fina sångrösten Kersti Esselvall Smås, som jag tror att Olle hade som elev på högskolan också. Missa inte det nästa gång om 14 dagar alltså, men detta programmet kommer i repris om en vecka. Nu ska vi avsluta programmet med en härlig sång med LP-bröderna. Det är väl rätt att göra så. Och så säger jag tack för i afton och Gud välsigne er alla som har tittat i afton.
En sång som heter Det bästa som kan hända dig.
Ja, vad fint. Varsågod.
Just du som tycker livet är så meningslöst och tomt och fluten är av sorger och besvär. Ja, om du ser det mörkt och svårt och prövningar är här, så har vi just till dig en hälsning här. Det bästa som kan hända dig är frälsningen i Jesus. Det bästa som kan hända dig är frälsningen i Jesus. Det han på korset dog för dig och dina synder bar. Till himmelen han gjorde vägen klar. Men även om du har det bra och ingen mot dig ler, och om du på framtiden du ser, så kanske tror att det är allt som livet har att ge. Men stopp min vän, det finns ju mycket mer. Det bästa som kan hända dig är frälsningen i Jesus. Det bästa som kan hända dig är frälsningen i Jesus. Det han på korset dog för dig och dina synder var. Till himmelen han gjorde vägen klar. Kan hända du ej fattar vad jag sjunger för dig här. Du tänker det är bara fantasi. Men samtidigt du märker att jag är glad och lycklig är. Och det är sant för jag är frälst och fri. Det bästa som kan hända dig är frälsningen i Jesus. Det bästa som kan hända dig är frälsningen i Jesus. Det han på korset dog för dig och dina synder var. Till